बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम।
शुरू अल्लाह के नाम से जो रहमान और रहीम है।
इक़रा बिस्मि रब्बिकल्लज़ी खलक़।
पढ़ो ए नबी अपने रब के नाम के साथ जिसने पैदा किया।
खलक़ल इंसान मिन अलक़।
जमे हुए खून के एक लोथड़े से इंसान की तख्लीक की।
इक़रा व रब्बुकल अकरम।
पढ़ो और तुम्हारा रब बड़ा करीम है।
अल्लज़ी अल्लम बिल क़लम।
जिसने कलम के जरिए से इल्म सिखाया।
अल्लमल इंसान मा लम यअलम।
इंसान को वो इल्म दिया जिसे वो न जानता था।
Assalamu alaikum students. We start our video in the name of Allah, who is most merciful, most beneficent. Today is the second video of the third week for first semester, second final term for English grade 10. Today we are going to read a poetry, a poem with the title King Bruce and the Spider. This is at page number 61 of your book, and the unit number is 16. It's a small poem written by Eliza Cook. So before we start the poetry and read it and explain it, let me tell you something about the poet herself. Eliza Cook was an English poet. She was born in London in 1818 and she died in 1889. So that means she was a 19th century English poet. Now she was the youngest of 11 children. She was entirely self-educated and wrote verses from the age of 14. So she started writing poetry from a very early age. We know that poets are God-gifted people, and normally they get inspiration from the world around, from nature sometimes, and from historical events. This provides them inspiration, a force that makes them write verses and convey their message in the form of poetry. So she started writing as early as at the age of 14. Her first volume was published at the age of 17. In 1849, she edited and published Eliza Cook's Journal. That was the name of her book. Her work is simple and highly moral. Now, as we'll see that this poetry, this poem is also, based on some moral lesson. So by moral, we mean that it teaches people, or it teaches the readers, or it tells the reader a story which has a moral lesson. In Urdu we call it ikhlaqi. So it has a moral lesson, and most of her poetry or her poems did have some moral lesson. In this poem she teaches the reader what she always practiced in her own life, to keep on trying and never to be discouraged. Well, this poet may have some autobiographical note. By autobiography we mean it's a kind of writing which tells the story of one's own life. So although apparently this is just a story of a king, an old king, and how he learned the lesson, but she is actually giving a lesson which she believed in herself and which she practiced all her life. I mean, she herself kept trying. She was self-educated. She didn't go to any formal educational institution. So, but she never lost hope and she never lost heart, and she kept on trying, and she became a successful poet. So this is what she tried to teach in this poetry? Well, she was also a proponent of political freedom of women. I mean, she believed that women should have political freedom. They should be actively taking part in the political system of the country. This is what she believed in. So she believed in the ideology of self-improvement, right, through education. So she believed that a person can improve one's own self with the help of education. She believed in it. This was her ideology, and she tried to propagate or tell others in her poetry the same ideology. So this ideology made her popular with working class public in both England and America. Although she was English, she was born in England, she was born in London, but she was equally popular in America, especially in working class public, just because of her message of self-improvement, determination, never to give up. This was her message. So when we read a poetry, it has two dimensions, you may say, or two aspects in a poetry which you have to learn. So as a student, for example, when we read a poetry, so the one aspect of reading it is to enjoy the music, the rhythm, and the words, in a poetry. And the second aspect is to understand, comprehend, and to learn some lesson, which the poet wants to compare in a poetry. So we'll do both today. In today's class, we'll just learn how to read a poetry, because it's normally a bit different from reading a prose passage. The basic difference between prose and poetry is that apparently, if you look at the structure of the poetry, it follows a certain kind of rhythm. There are rhymes also, but it's not necessary. In this poetry, we will see the rhymes also. The rhyming scheme, for example, is A, B, A, B. Mean the first line rhymes with the third line, and the second line rhymes with the fourth line. This is how the stanza composition is. So the poetry is written in stanzas, and every stanza, every line has a kind of rhythm or a music in it, which you have to articulate when you read or when you learn how to read a poetry, right? Because it's not simply reading with your eyes, just like you read a prose passage and you try to get the message. Rather, it is something which you can enjoy. It has an acoustic or auditory effect also. That means that it should sound, nice to your ears also. Right? For that, we'll just go through, we'll read the poetry once, and then don't worry if you do not understand fully any word or any line while we are reading. Just enjoy the acoustics, the auditory, the sound effect of the poetry. And then we'll pick up each and every stanza, line, and words, and we'll try to, comprehend it, and we'll try to explain it so that we can understand the message of the poetry also, right? And then during the explanation, I'm going to tell you some meanings of the different expressions, words, and we'll try to understand that. And in the last part of today's video, we'll discuss some of the questions, right? Comprehension questions, maybe 2 or so. We'll see the central idea, summary. We'll summarize it in the end, and then we'll end today's lesson, just like the other lessons, with some idioms, right? So there are 5 idioms which we are going to, which have nothing to do with the poetry, but in a separate section we'll discuss and explain the idioms also, right? So let's start reading reading the poetry and then we'll come to the explanation. King Bruce of Scotland flung himself down in a lonely mood to think. 'Tis true, he was monarch and wore a crown, but his heart was beginning to sink. For he had been trying to do a great deed to make his people glad. He had tried and tried but couldn't succeed, so became quite sad. He flung himself down in a low despair, as grieved as man could be. And after a while, as he pondered there, "I'll give it all up," said he. Now just at the moment a spider dropped with its silken cobweb clue, and the king in the midst of his thinking stopped to see what the spider would do. 'Twas a long way up to the ceiling dome, and it hung by a rope so fine that how it would get to its cobweb home, King Bruce could not divine. It soon began to cling and crawl straight up with strong endeavor, but down it came with a slippery sprawl, as near to the ground as ever. Up it ran, not a second could stay to utter the least complaint, till it fell still lower, and there it lay a little dizzy and faint. Its head grew steady, again it went, and travelled a half-yard higher. It was a delicate thread it had to tread, and a road where its feet would tire. Again it fell and swung below, but again it quickly mounted, till up and down, now fast, now slow, 9 brave attempts were counted. "Sure," cried the king, "that foolish thing will strive no more to climb, when it toils so hard to reach and cling, and tumbles every time." But up the insect went once more. Ah me, 'tis an anxious minute. He's only a foot from his cobweb door. Oh, say, will he lose or win it? Steadily, steadily, inch by inch, higher and higher he got, and a bold little run at the very last pinch put him into his native cot. "Bravo, bravo!" the king cried out. "All honor to those who try. The spider up there defied despair. He conquered, and why should not I?" And Bruce of Scotland braced his mind, and gossips tell the tale that he tried once more as he tried before, and that time did not fail. Well, so this is a popular story which Eliza Cook has told in the form of a poetic verse. We all read probably the story of King Bruce of Scotland while making some attempts, probably in war somewhere. He could not win, and he was disheartened. He probably left the battlefield, went to some nook and corner of his palace maybe, or somewhere, right? And he was very disheartened. He didn't want to try again because he had failed so much time. So all of a sudden, to his surprise maybe, or to his good luck, for example, you might say, to his good luck, good fortune, there came a spider, hanging down from the ceiling dome, trying to reach its cobweb, and falling down over and over again. And when the king had almost started that it would not try again, the spider made one final attempt and succeeded to reach, its cobweb. And that gave, a boost, or, that gave, a lesson of life to the king. And he thought, if a small creature, a mindless creature, you might say, in terms of compared to human beings, So if that creature could try and get what he wanted in its life, so why can't I, the king? And that boosted his morale, and he mustered up, he gathered his courage. Probably, as in the last stanza, it is told that, people say that he made one final attempt and he won the battle. So this was just a summary of it. We'll see now line by line, we'll go stanza by stanza. The first stanza, King Bruce of Scotland flung himself down. Now, fling or flung means to throw something. Fling is the first form, base verb. Fling means to throw violently. To throw something violently. So what did the king do? So we are probably in the middle of the story, or here the story begins, when the King Bruce of Scotland, he flung himself down in a lonely mood. Now why did he do that? To think. Now he wanted to think, or he wanted to ponder. He just wanted to retire, all right? So he flung himself down. He flung himself down, past tense of fling is flung, right? And he was lonely. And this is what he thought. Now what did he think? Tis true. Sorry, no. This is what actually these two lines give us information about the king. Tis true, he was monarch and wore a crown. Now this word is, well, some people might read it monarch or monarch, but it's monarch. The real pronunciation is monarch. So who is a monarch? A king is a monarch. And the first word is tis. Tis, actually, it's, the poet actually has made it, in order to fit it into the poetry, the word actually is it is, or it's. But in order to fit better in the line, the poet has written it tis. So tis means it is, or it's. So it is true. He was a monarch. Who was a monarch? The Bruce. King Bruce was a king, monarch, and he wore a crown. So crown is a symbol of being a king or queen. So he wore a crown. But at this time, when he flung himself down, his heart was beginning to sink. So sink means to drown. Literally, it means to drown. Just like when something drowns into water, some non-living thing, it just goes down into the water, it's called sink. So when somebody is beginning to sink, means he or she is feeling a lot of disappointment, despair. He was losing hope, actually. This is what it means. Why was he losing hope? Well, in the next stanza, from line number 5 to 8, the poet tells us why was he, beginning to lose hope. For he had been trying to do a great deed to make his people glad. He had tried and tried but couldn't succeed, so became quite sad. So this King Bruce of Scotland, he had been trying to do something great, to achieve something great, probably to fight against some country, probably England, and win a war so that his people become glad. Now glad means to be happy. So he wanted to make his people happy. How? By winning some battle or some war. But he couldn't succeed. Despite many attempts and despite lots of efforts and everything, he couldn't succeed. So this has made him very sad. So he was sitting there, he flung himself and his heart began to sink, and he became very sad. Then he flung himself down in a low despair, as grieved as man could be. So he didn't simply flung himself, because of tiredness or something. No, he flung himself down in a low despair, right? In a low despair. In a low despair means disheartened, discouraged. He was feeling very low at that time. I told the reason why. Right? As grieved as man could be. I mean, this was the utmost, sadness he could feel. Whatever any man could feel in such a situation, grieved. Grieved means to feel very sorrowful, So if any man, in such a situation could feel, he was feeling at that time. And after a while, after some time, as he pondered there, I'll give it all up, said he. So after thinking for some time, ponder means to think deeply. Ponder means to think deeply. So he pondered, he thought for a while deeply, and finally he concluded, and this was his remark, I'll give it all up. So he was at the brink of giving it all up. He wanted to stop, to end his efforts, whatever he was trying to do. He wanted to wrap it up all, give it up all, and leave everything. Then what happened? Now just at the moment, a spider dropped with its silken cobweb clue. Now, right at that moment, a spider dropped from the ceiling. And that spider was attached with a silken cobweb clue. Now the word clue is used differently. Normally, in prose, if for example this word is used, so clue means a hint, for example. You see a hint or something. But here, the poet uses this word clue in totally a different meaning. It means a thread, a silken, the spider makes its home with cobweb. It makes its cobweb with small threads, silken threads. So, and it hangs down with that also. So the spider dropped down, with that cobweb clue or thread. And the king, in the midst of his thinking, stopped to see what the spider would do. So he stopped thinking there, and he got interested in the spider. What the spider would do, it just fell down. It was long way up to the ceiling down, and it hung by a rope so fine that how it would get to its cobweb home, King Bruce could not divine. Well, the king started to think, or he started to see, he wanted to see how this little creature, spider, would reach its cobweb home. Because this, this thread or this rope is so fine, it can snap, it can break at any time. So the king became interested in the activity of the spider. So he stopped thinking, And he wanted to see that how the spider would move up to that long way, up to the ceiling dome. So ceiling dome is the rounded roof, the ceiling which was made of rounded roof, normally in shrines, you'll see in the shrines and mosques sometimes, this dome is made of rounded roof. So the spider had to reach all the way up to that rounded roof or ceiling. Right? Well, another word, divine, is used. So clue means a thread here, and another unusual meaning, divine. We all know that divine, we already read it. Divine means godly. Divine means something. Divine as an adjective means something related to heavens, God. Okay, but here the poet has used this word not as an adjective but as a verb. So as a verb, divine means to discover something by guesswork or to make out something. So the poet actually could not make out, could not discover by guesswork that how this little creature is going to reach the topmost, to its home. So divine means to work out. To make out. To make out something. To make out or to guess or discover something by guesswork. Alright? Then it soon began to cling and crawl straight up with strong endeavor. Now endeavor means endeavor. This is the British spelling. In American spelling there is no U, but in British spelling there is V-O-U-R, endeavor. Endeavor means to make effort. To make effort by doing something hard. So so this little creature, spider, it began to cling and crawl up, with strong effort, but down it came with a slippery sprawl, as near to the ground as ever. So it just fell down, okay, in a slippery sprawl. Now sprawl means to spread in an awkward position. So that thread was very slippery. So it came down with that slippery thread and it fell in an awkward position. It came down with a slippery sprawl as near to the ground as ever. Almost, very close to the ground, almost touching the ground. Well, here the poet uses, in this stanza, you'll find an example. I'll write it here. It's a figure of speech, alliteration. Alliteration is when two words, they are placed together starting with the same first letter. So here you'll find an example of alliteration, slippery sprawl. It's almost like a tongue twister also. I mean, you can't say it again and again. Okay, so slippery sprawl is an example of alliteration where two words closely related and they both start with the letter S. Okay. So then what happened? Up it ran, not a second could stay to utter the least complaint, till it fell still lower. There it lay, a little dizzy and faint. So as soon as it fell down, it did not stop there even for a second, all right, it did not stay there. It started its journey all over again, and without making any complaint, that this thread was slippery, or this was wrong, or that was wrong. No. It started its journey all over again. And then it fell again, for the second or the third time, even still lower. And there it lay. The king could see it, lying there a little dizzy and faint. Now, dizzy is when you feel, feeling giddy. When you feel that your head is going round and round, especially if you take some kind of ride or something, so you feel giddy, as if you might vomit, right? Or your head goes round and round. That feeling is called as feeling dizzy. So it's just the king's imagination that this, because it fell down for the second time, the spider might have been feeling dizzy, and it faint also means when you lose your consciousness because of some sickness or some overexhaustion. So when you lose your consciousness, so it lay dizzy and faint also. Now its head grew steady again, it went. Now after some time, probably few seconds or a little time, its head became steady. The spider's head became steady, grew steady. It means it came to senses. It regained its senses, and it started its journey again and traveled a half yard higher even. So from the point where he fell down last time, it moved further, even a half yard. It was a delicate thread it had to tread, and a road where its feet would tire. So this, this thread was very delicate, right? Where this spider had to tread. Tread means to walk. The spider had to walk on this very delicate, thin line. Thin, that's that thread which is made very finely and delicately, and it's very delicate. It could break at any moment, all right? So, and at this road, its feet would tire. He would just get tired, while walking again and again. Again it fell and swung below, but again it quickly mounted, till up and down, now fast, now slow, 9 brave attempts were counted. So again and again, the king was watching this little creature trying again and again, going up, falling down, and then quickly starting all over again. So the king counted probably 9 attempts the spider had made. And then he started thinking, the king started thinking, what? Sure, cried the king, the foolish thing will strive no more to climb when it toils so hard to reach and cling and tumbles every time. So the king started thinking, or he thought, that this is going to be its last attempt, and he thought that the spider would no more toil himself. Toil means to tire ones, to make effort, to work hard. So he thought that the spider would no more work hard to reach its cobweb. Now it's going to relinquish. It's going to leave all the efforts, probably just like he himself had done. Right? So, but up the insect went once more. So what? The insect, the spider, did not give up, and it went up once more. Ah me, its anxious minute. Ah me is a sign of exclamation. It's a moment of wonder, a moment of surprise. What's going to happen? Ah me, what's going to happen? This an anxious minute. This was an anxious minute probably for the king and for the spider as well. He's only a foot from the cobweb door. Now the spider had started climbing up, and probably it was just about to reach its cobweb, or only a foot, away from its cobweb door. Oh, say, will he lose or win it? So this time the king was, just looking at the spider. Will he make it? Will he win or lose one more time? Steadily, inch by inch, higher and higher he got. And a bold little run at the very last pinch put him into his native cot. Well, and finally, this is what the king observed. This is what he saw. That in the last pinch, the very last pinch means the very last foot or distance of its distance to its cobweb. It made a bold run, and this last final push, it had put the spider in its native cot. Native cot is here, its cobweb, its home, right? So, but this time, steadily, slowly. Steadily means, with the same pace, not going very fast, not going very slow. Steadily and covering small distance, inch by inch, it moved higher and higher till it reached its cobweb. And the king was surely excited. He said, "Bravo, bravo!" The king cried out. So bravo means well done, well done. So he said, "Well done." The king cried, "All honor to those who try." So he paid respect to those who try in their life despite all difficulties. So he said, "All honor to those who try." The spider up there defied despair. So defied means to challenge. Defy means to challenge. So he says, "All honor to you," to spider who has defied despair, challenged the disappointment. The spider did not let the despair, the disappointment, overcome it. Rather, it challenged it. It defied, and he conquered. And why should not I? So if a spider is a small insect, that brainless little creature, if that could conquer what he wanted, with its, tireless efforts, so why can't I? So probably this was a eureka moment for the king. This was a moment of self-realization. This was the moment when he realized that success does not come normally through easy way. It comes through persistence. It comes through hard way, through hard work, and by trying again and again. So what happened next? This is told by the people in gossips, in stories. And Bruce of Scotland braced his mind. So braced his mind means he determined something. He decided, a firm determination. He probably determined that he was going to make one more effort and, try once more. All right? And gossip tell the tale. So tale here means a story. So the gossips, the people, public, they talk about it, and they probably say, and this is what they say, that he tried once more, and he tried as he tried before, and that time did not fail. So because he tried this final time with full determination, he tried with courage, with utmost determination, perseverance, right? And with all that, he achieved success in his life. And this time he did not fail, right? So this was a little poetry, a story in a poetry. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, what's the central idea of this little poem? We know it's very obvious. The central idea, the whole poetry or the whole poem is built around the idea that those who keep trying for something great in life, they are sure to achieve success. They surely achieve success after making, great efforts. One should never lose hope, in life. We should never give in, never give up. If you have decided to achieve anything in life, if you have dreamed about something, so anything you can dream, you can achieve it. This is what the lesson is all about. Our efforts will never go wasted. Our efforts will never waste. God will definitely reward us with success, but the condition is that you don't have to, give up. You don't have to give in. You have to keep trying, till the very last moment when you achieve that particular aim in your life. This is what is a great lesson for all of us, because we know in our lives there are moments when we feel low, when we wanted to achieve something but still we can't, either it's academic or non-academic. Sometimes you feel low in your life. So you should not let despair or disappointment overcome you. So you should analyze your mistakes, you should analyze your efforts and start it all over again, start afresh. And definitely God will reward you with great success. All right. So summary is, we know this story that King Bruce, after making several attempts in achieving something great in his life to make his people happy, was very disappointed, he was disheartened, he felt low, and he retired to some lonely place, right? And there he saw a spider, that made several attempts to reach its cobweb before finally getting to its cobweb. And this gave actually a lesson to the king, and he learned a lesson of his life that success comes only to those who make continuous efforts, who don't lose hope and who don't stop, trying. And then he tried again until he succeeded in his mission. Okay. Well, that's a small summary. Now coming to the exercise. So that is your homework also, right? So there are two questions written here at page number 64 of your book. The first is, what lesson did the king learn from the spider? Is what we discussed also. The lesson he learned is that the lesson he learned from the spider is that a person should keep trying hard to achieve success in life. Right? This is what the lesson he learned from. You can write in your own words what lesson he learned from the spider. Write a short note on King Bruce of Scotland. So a short note, probably you can summarize this story. King Bruce of Scotland, how he became disappointed, and then how he went to some lonely place, and then how he got inspired by a spider. His energy, his morale was boosted, and how he tried once more and he achieved success. So this short paragraph you can write about King Bruce of Scotland. Well, so I'll write here, this is your homework. Comprehension questions 1 and 2 at page 64 of your book. You will write it down in your notebook, 2 separate questions, okay? What lesson did the king learn from the spider? 4 to 5 sentences about it. And question number 2, a short paragraph on King Robert Bruce or King Bruce of Scotland. Right? This is your homework. Now, in exercise C, these are some of the idioms which we are going to discuss. Right? And then you need to learn them, you need to use them in your sentences, and you must practice them so that you can use them in your speaking, in your writing, especially during the exam also. So the first idiom is to put into practice. To put something into practice, right? That means to carry out in deeds. Sometimes you say something and then you put it into practice. You act upon it. This could be one of the meaning. And for example, you can use it in a sentence. During the war, the soldiers put into practice the training they got in military schools. So whatever they learned in a military school, they put into practice, during the war. Another sentence could be, we should put into practice what we learn or what we preach. Whatever we tell others, to do, we should put it into our own practice. So this was the idiom number 1. Idiom number 2 is also very commonly used, a wild goose chase. An enterprise here means any job, any work which will not succeed. So if from the circumstances you see that something is sure to fail or it's not going to succeed, we call it, it's a wild goose chase. For example, if somebody is, looking for his lost phone, for example, is Uthman, any person, who is looking for his lost phone, maybe on a wild goose chase. So we think that he's not going to find his phone back, it's lost forever. So we might say that he is on a wild goose chase. In the same way, if the thieves or the robbers have committed a robbery and they have run away, they have escaped, and the police is trying to search them, and we think that the police is not going to catch them, so we say the police, the police is on a wild goose chase while trying to catch the thieves. Well, the next one is to end in smoke. To have no result is probably the same kind of idiomatic expression as we read before. To end in smoke means to have no result or to come to nothing. So, for example, you make lots of effort trying to do something, but the end result is just nothing, something you wanted to achieve, but you can't do it. So you express this all in one idiomatic expression, to end in smoke. For example, all his efforts ended in smoke. Then the next, number 4, is at a loss. It means puzzled or not knowing what to do. If somebody is at a loss, it means he or she is puzzled. He doesn't or she doesn't know what to do or what not to do. So, for example, the news of accident left him at a loss. Sometimes you get some shocking news that it leaves you at a loss. It leaves you puzzled. You don't know what to do or what not to do. So that is at a loss. And the final one is again very popular among the students. It's very common, with flying colors. To emerge successfully from some difficult task. So if you achieve what you wanted, a difficult task, and you remain successful, so we say that with this, we use this expression with flying colors. For example, he passed his examination with flying colors, right? For example, he You say our team won the match with flying colors, means we came out successful after this match or this difficult task. Okay. So these were the 5 idiomatic expressions. You just need to go through them. They are in your book at page number 64. Read the examples, and there are small exercises written where you have to replace the words with these idioms. For example, number 1 says the soldier made use of the training they got in military school. So you will replace the words made use of with this idiom to put into practice. The soldiers put into practice the training they got in the military school. So just like this, you have to replace the words with these idiomatic expressions in these exercises at page number 64 also. Right? So I hope you have understood, you have enjoyed the poetry, both aspects, the lesson also, it gives us a lesson of our life also. This is how we can summarize it all, today's lesson, and you have, practice reading it also. Read it aloud and, read it and enjoy reading, the auditory part, the sound effects of this poetry, the rhythm, right? It's very rhythmic, and it's very musical in nature, this poetry, and it tells a very popular common story in a very nice way, right? So I hope you have enjoyed it, and with this we have come to an end to our today's lesson. In the next lesson, hopefully on coming Monday, we are going to study another lesson. So with that, thank you very much and goodbye.